If a governmental edict required me to ditch all of my board games or card games, the board games are going. First, Innovation and The Mind are my two favorite games. They're both card games. I want to keep them around, but more generally, I love picking up a hand of cards and seeing what chance is given me. What can I do with these raw materials to make something happen in my favor? And usually in card games, you're going to get more and more cards over the course of play, so you have to account for that. What could I possibly get? Am I weighing my hopes, trying to get exactly the right card, or am I, trying to be accommodating to whatever might come my way? I just love having to deal with those chance elements in a game. So I'm always on the lookout for new card games, which brings me to Tether. This is the first release from designer Mark McGee, who started his own company, How to Steam Broccoli. There was a crowdfunding project for Tether a while back, and after looking at the campaign, what the game was, I knew I had to back it for two reasons. One, Mark McGee lives near me. He's been to my house for a promotional event for the 2023 game Top Pop, where we had a soda tasting event. Got lots of strange sodas and had them around the house for Top Pop, co-designed with Joshua Mills. So that was cool. But second, the game had a very cool twist. Namely, the deck is a mirror deck. That is, you got the number here, and you have the reverse of it on the other side. This is designed by Daniel Solis, another North Carolina resident, lives relatively close to me as well. So Daniel Solis came up with the mirror deck, and Mark McGee got permission to use it for Tether. I backed it, got it, have now played it 11 times, love it, and want to tell you about it as well because it's easy to overlook a little card game on the shelf. So don't want to let that happen here. Tether is a game for 2 or 4 players, and I'll show you the 2-player game first. Each player gets a hand of 5 cards, and there are 3 cards turned face up. These cards all show an astronaut floating in space, adrift. So here's 3 lone astronauts adrift. There's no up or no down, which ties in nicely with the idea of the game, the numbers being on both sides. So I'll show you my cards. That's not normally done, but I want to see how things work. One player in the game is going to play horizontally, that's me, and one player plays vertically, that is you. That is what we're trying to do. I'm trying to go long and you're trying to go tall. On a turn, you're going to do one of 2 things. You can play an astronaut from your hand to the table, so long as you can add to it. You can't just leave an astronaut floating on their own out in the middle of nowhere. That's not safe. So I can take this card and play it as a 58. So I have 2 adjacent cards, 57 and 58. That is a valid play. I don't have 56 or 59 in my hand or on the table because you can take adrift astronauts and add them to the play area. So I'm done with my turn. I draw a card, add it to my hand. So you go now. You look at the cards on the table here. You look at your own hand of cards and you decide you're going to play 26, 27, and thanks to that 27, you can now play 28. You have nothing else to play. Nothing is good here. Draw a card, add it to your hand. Obviously, I have a hand of cards for you off on the side here. For examples, if you cannot play or do not want to play on a turn, you have the second option available to you for an action, and that is to set an astronaut adrift, which sounds rude, but you're going to do it sometimes. So choose a card from your hand, put it on the side. You can then take any of the other adrift astronauts, not that one, or you can draw from the deck. And then at the end of your turn, you draw a card, but only if you have fewer than 6 cards in your hand. If you have 6, you do not draw. So setting an astronaut adrift is the only way to add cards to your hand. Generally, you're going to discard 1 and draw 2. When you are playing cards, you may play as many as you want, but you're only going to draw 1 at the end of your turn. So maybe now you drew this card and you're going to add 76 to the table. And you are going vertically, 76, 75, just like 28, 27, 26. Okay, this is good. For you, it does nothing for me because we're going to score cards differently. I score based on the width of a group. You score based on its height. So Maybe on a future turn, I want to play 77 and 78. Okay, that's fine. We've got multiple groups. You can have all sorts of groups floating around on the table. You would love to play 77 onto 76, but you can't just attach them. You have to place something to the table. And when you place something to the table, you can then have groups join it. So if you play 88, you can then slide this group over and attach it. So 88, 87. And now you can attach other groups to that. So you can do this. Attach 77, 76. As long as everything is connecting to that one card that you played from your hand, you can attach any number of groups to it. When a group hits 6 or more cards, it scores. And again, you score based on its height, 1, 2, 3, 4. I score on its width, 2. You have little score trackers included in the box, so you have 4 points. I have 2. Keep track of that. And now we continue play. Groups score again when they hit 10 cards and when they hit 14 cards. If you're putting together groups and it went to 10 cards immediately, you only score it once. You don't score as if it hit 6 and then 10, scoring it twice. So we have this group here, which is bad for me. So I can add another card to it in the future, 79. Okay. You might want to add more here. I might want to add more here, but we can't because 76 is here. I can't add 76 to it because that card is already used. Tether has a 53 card deck with numbers from 1 to 98. Those restrictions are important. As you keep playing cards, you're trying to play things so that your opponent can't make use of them. So me playing the 77, 78 was possibly a terrible idea, but I didn't want to set the 77 adrift because then you could definitely use it. I possibly could have waited and played this as an 87 at some point, but you're playing things and you hope stuff works out. You don't just want to, you can't just discard forever because then your opponent's going to make something and you have nothing that's going on. So these spots are both dead to us. You can't add 78, I can't add 76. And so looking at these considerations as you're playing cards, you always have to keep that in mind. These double numbers are kind of dead points, but that you can still maybe build around. In the future, I could add 66 here. If I were able to get 65, 64, 63, I could attach this as well, have this really wide group. Okay, we're up to 8 cards here. When it hits 10, it's going to score. So I keep trying to push wide, you keep trying to push tall. And the game continues until we score a group of size 14. After we score, game ends. If one player has 6 points or more over the other player, you end. It's a mercy end. Okay, get 6 points ahead and that's it. You win. Or if the deck runs out, then you take one more turn each and see who has the most points at that time. So it can be a challenge as you're looking at your hand. You're trying to see here and what are the possible combinations and what can I get? And oh, wait. Yep. Wait. 1920. So you're going to keep flipping cards around and see what you get. There's a lot to consider, both because you're looking at the numbers that you can play on, but you're also trying to consider what I can play on. Are you putting something into play that then I can attach in a big way? If you ended up with, let's see, I've got 53 here. If you put down 25, that would be a 52 for me, and then I could play a 53, and that may help me work towards connecting this group. Again, it's a lot to consider as you're looking at the cards on the table. There's, again, 53 cards. That's it. But we've often found ourselves really puzzling over our hands and trying to see what's possible. So if I take these cards that I pushed away to begin with, if you had them now, 70 could go out here for me, but you don't want that. You've got 7 and 9, so you could be looking for 8. You've got a 29 in your hand, so boom, just drop that down. Now you got 4 cards here. This is a ridiculous score. If you manage to get this, you get 4 points already, and I have nothing on here. I have nothing to add. That's bad news. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's a runaway. Sometimes it's closely fought. You'll have 8 little groups on the table and then they slowly just congeal, or all at once, just boom, boom, boom. I've had some games end very quickly with only 2 groups, one just shooting the 14 cards. There's lots of variety in how the game plays out. It's a nice challenge in a small box. Ideally, that description gives you a sense of why I find Tether so intriguing. As I mentioned, I played 11 times so far, 8 2-player games and 3 4-player games. That's on a backed copy of the game, all within a week of me receiving it. So yes, I'm smitten. I'm a fan. Really love it. The 4-player game works differently in that you are playing in teams of 2. You each get a hand of 5 cards, and the active player for the team will have their score marker in front of them. You have the same options on your turn. You can set an astronaut adrift, pick up another card, and then if you have fewer than 6 cards, draw. Or you put a card on the table, you play other cards from your hand, you attach adrift astronauts, you attach groups, but in addition, your teammate can play cards as well, so long as they're being connected to that astronaut that you played. And at the end of your turn, you draw a card like normal, and if your teammate played, they draw a card as well. There are restrictions. You can't talk about numbers that you have in your hand. You can talk, but not about numbers. And it's one of those fuzzy rules that I know a lot of people are bothered by. How much can you actually say? You're not supposed to talk about numbers. But we were saying things like, can you add to this group? Or if I add to this group, can you add as well? That's it. And so you're communicating, but in a really vague sense. I know the possible numbers that you could play on that group, but saying you have 1 of 10 cards is... it feels like it's fair game. We were playing along those lines. You could just be strictly silent and just go with that. You decide how you want to play there. But the 4-player game was really interesting just because you're not setting things up quite the same way you are in the 2-player game. You don't know what your partner can do, so you're kind of just putting things out there and then hoping. So maybe you put down a 7-8 and the 10 is adrift and you just hope they have the 9 and can add that in there, and suddenly you add something else. So you're playing a bit more hopefully, I guess, and maybe things are going to work out this way. Maybe they don't. So it's fascinating play with 4 players as well. The 2-player game I love just because I love 2-player games. I love card games. This has a real challenge to it where you're trying to play all the right things. You're trying to hold back cards that won't let the opponent do something, but you don't necessarily want to let them adrift or play them, or sometimes playing them upside down is just as bad as playing them the other way, depending on what's on the table. So you got this gin rummy aspect where you don't want to discard the wrong thing that's going to let the opponent score. Cool. It works just like that, but in a trickier way because there's more options in how you can play the cards. It's a really fine design. Hopefully, Mark gets some widespread distribution and get games on shelves. It's a cool design, and I wish him lots of luck. And if he does something again like this, I'm gonna back it again. So good job with your first release, Mark. Thanks.